Hi everyone, this is Donna from Studio of the Heart, and I am here to share a new book that I've created. This is my inaugural video on YouTube, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in and checking this out. I have recently jumped into the world of junk journaling, and I was intrigued by an artist by the name of Jabid Neary who lives in Great Britain. And I loved her technique for taking a story and building a journal around it. So my inspiration was Jabid Neary for this book. This will be for sale in my Etsy store. It just opened today. It's Studio of the Heart by Donna. If you want to look it up and check it out. I don't have a lot in there yet, but I will soon. This will be one of the items that I post today after I'm done with this video. So I wanted to share this book with you because it takes junk journaling to a different level, kind of to a different place. I started out with a piece of secondhand ephemera. This leather folder used to be a policy holder for a life insurance agent back in the 60s. I happened to pick it up for like $2 at my secondhand art supply store here, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I distressed it by hand. Using a little bit of sandpaper, some stamping inks. I had some fun with the coloring. The front details are all scrapbook paper, decoupage, some new and old fabric scraps and laces. And this little guy is a little pin. It's kind of a bonus. A lot of the souvenir shops here in Colorado carry these. It's a preserved aspen leaf and resin. So I kind of picked up all these little bits and pieces, and I threw together a little bit of a story. This particular story is about a character named Jay. She is a steampunk debutante who was supposed to be having her party, but 3 days before that party happened, her city came under attack by a rebel group who didn't like the way the council was running things. And in the course of fleeing the bombing, she and her mother were separated, and she kept a journal. Her aspiration was to become a news journalist, so she kept a chronicle of her travels. However, being as she was on the run, those travels were recorded in various scraps and bits and pieces that she ended up collecting and eventually pasting into a form of a book. This book was then given to a historian by a family member who had rediscovered the pieces of it in the middle of a woodland and tried to glue it back together even a little further. And the historian, being left with very little details about something that fascinated her, has decided to pass that book on to you. So I'm going to go ahead and begin and share with you the story of Jay and the Raven King and the adventure of her discovery of the Raven King and his father in a clearing in a woodland. We'll begin with the note from the historian. This volume was given to me by a young man whose family had treasured it for many years. It has been found by his great-grandmother while out in the woods. The chronicle fills in some of the details I have been missing in following the saga of Bran Masterson and the story of the Raven King. I believe it was written by his wife, Jay, just prior to their marriage. She writes of her time as a refugee and the discovery of this brilliant man and his father, Corbin, a former physician, in their woodland retreat some time shortly after the beginning of the Great War. I am struck by her tender treatment and humor in respect to his stubborn nature. I am frustrated that there is little real information about the amazing production of the insectoid machines that have now revolutionized farming, ending the famines, and paved the way for the restoration of their natural counterparts. Ah well, it is indeed a document worth preserving, and a lovely take on what life was like for these two intrepid inventors. I leave it to the next historian to continue to fill in the blanks and round out the details that have eluded me. Many blessings. So this note was found tucked inside the front pocket of this journal. So Jay's journal begins on day 21. She fled the city. She kept her debutante photograph. She didn't believe she'd ever wear anything as fine again in her life, and she was not wrong. It was some generations before she was able to be free of the warfare that plagued her life. So we begin with her day 21. And as we move through, we see things that she's kept. She's kept articles, images of fashions of her time, pictures of the airships and the planes that destroyed her city. And then her records of the things she saw while she was fleeing. Her compass and various bits and pieces that she sketched and kept inside her notebook. And as she continued to journey, she would pick up bits and pieces and keep them together and take notes as she went. And as she built her book, she created many secret places to tuck things away, mementos of her journeys, and other things as needed. Sometimes she would leave them blank, waiting for you to help her fill in the details as history continued to progress. Now, as she ran through the woodlands, she came to a place where an old apothecary had set up a camp. He had been a physician. He is raising his son on his own after he had been widowed. And the lovely widow and the apothecary had once worked on a plan to help restore their society and end the famines that were plaguing their city. In the course of their studies, they were studying insects, the effects of pollinators, and their benefit to the environment. Jay drew a picture of the old man after he had hosted her for tea upon stumbling upon his home. And there were many details that she tucked away in her book for you to read, as she was hoping to pass on this legacy to you. And in the course of the studies, she found various details on insects, and on the studies of the mechanics of how they flew. She eventually met Corbin's son, Bran. And Bran was a unique fellow. He had run away as a teenager and become a mechanic in the city. He worked very hard and rose very quickly until they were working on the invention of the Aether generator. And due to a terrible accident, Bran lost his mobility and a good portion of his face. He was rescued by his father, who built him a respirator, rebuilt his hands, and created the armor that his son wore to protect him from the elements. Bran hated his existence and therefore transferred that hate to his father, and it wasn't until he met Jay that he began to value his life again. And as Jay continued to record her accounts, you'll see the evolving of their relationship. Now, as I said before, both men were at odds when Jay met them. The Raven King was at odds with his father, and his father was at odds with the Raven King because they both disagreed on the best way to continue the research and use the science in order to save humanity. But it was through Jay's intervention, her conversations, and her companionship, and the discovery of Bran's mother's notebook that they found a way to come together once more. As Jay continued to live with these people, she fell in love with Bran and accepted Corbin as a father figure. She tucked a journal away in the back of her notebook so that her children and grandchildren could continue the work that she and her soon-to-be husband and father-in-law had begun. So in the course of this book, I hope that you will be able to find those details and fill them in for posterity. There's plenty of space to record your thoughts. There's plenty of room to continue the story or end it as you see fit. And it is my hope that you will take as great a pleasure in enjoying this book as I did in making it for you. Thank you so very much for your time, and I hope and pray that you've had a wonderful day and that you will continue to do so, and that you'll adventure along with Jay and the Raven King at a later date. Y'all have fun now.